Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's tutorial, we're gonna do this layered wafer paper technique. It's a wafer paper wrap that I layered on top of each other to get this really cool geometric design. And I'm also gonna show you how I made these wafer paper cake decorations. So let's get right to it. First, we're gonna go ahead and buttercream our cake. I'm using my normal crusting American buttercream, which I will link in the video description or put an iCard for you so you can see that video if that's something that you want to try. And I'm just using my big tall scraper to smooth down the sides. Since this is a taller cake, sometimes I like to use the big tall ones. If you pay attention, I use a lot of different scrapers. It just kind of depends on my mood for that day. Then we're going to go ahead and buttercream our top tier as well. This was a 6-inch and an 8-inch. No, I think it was 6-inch and 6-inch and 8-inch. Sorry, I had to think about it for a second there. And both cakes have 3 layers of cake and 2 layers of buttercream filling. Now, after each cake is frosted, I go ahead and put them in the refrigerator to firm up. I hesitate to put them in the freezer when I'm doing wafer paper because I don't want the condensation to affect the cake. So for this situation, go ahead and just use your refrigerator. And then I just use my edible printer to add color to these pieces of wafer paper. I will try to link the color, if I can find it again, in the description box. I kind of went off of paint colors that I liked. And I've just used my circle cutters to mark out circles, and I'm just cutting them manually. I do have some of those circle punch cutters, but I don't have any the size that I needed. So I just went ahead and did it by hand. And this is 0 grade wafer paper that I'm using for this. And then missing footage alert, here it comes. I just used floral wire, and I lined them up in a row. And then I added in between each. Okay, so I'm trying to having a hard time trying to figure out how to explain this. I put, there you can see, the wire in between the 2 pieces of wafer paper, and I glued them just with a little bit of water and set them aside to dry. Now I'm cutting off the extra from my blue pieces. This is a very pale blue. I think it's called melted snow or melted ice is what it's called. And just cut off the excess, set those aside for a second. And then I had some flowers printed on, this is the double wafer paper. And then I just backed it with a little bit of the 0 grade as well, because I wanted them to be extra rigid because they're going to stand up on the cake. And I didn't want them to flop. So I just used the 2 different kinds of wafer paper, cut off the excess, and these were printed with my edible printer again. And then I'm cutting little pieces that I'm going to use to glue the wire to the back. Just cut some strips and cut the wire to size. And then I'm just going to use a little water on the wafer paper, then stick your wire. And then just go ahead and glue your flower to the other side of the wire. And ta-da! There we have a flower that's ready for the cake. And then I did this with all of them. And make sure you don't add too much water to your wafer paper because it will melt. So kind of dab it in the water and then maybe brush it off on a paper towel or on just a regular towel to get the excess water off before you put it on the wafer paper. And then I wanted the stem to be a little thicker and brown instead of white. So I'm just using my brown floral tape. You stretch it to activate the glue. And then I just kind of wrapped it around the wire and it'll stick to itself with a little tension. And I did it a few times on each stem. Now we're going to go ahead and get our wrap ready. Now I had measured the circumference of the cake. So I knew the circumference and the height. So I knew how big of a piece I needed. And obviously your paper is not going to be that big. So you can add length to it by just layering up your pieces and then cutting off the excess. And I'm not so worried about seeing the seams because this is the base part of the wrap. And we're going to add layers of triangles on top. And I just glued those with a little bit of a dampened brush again. And if you do add too much water, it's going to kind of pucker a little bit. But again, like I said, since this is going to be layered up, you're not really going to see it so much. Plus, it will dry. I did not really have a design in mind. I mean, I had an idea of what I wanted. I had a vision in my head, but I wasn't quite sure how I was going to approach that. So I did do a couple test runs that I did not film to kind of get an idea of how these are going to lay and to get the kind of pattern that I wanted. It's kind of reminds me of a mountain landscape, really. And again, I'm just using a little bit of water to attach these pieces to your base layer of wafer paper. And this did take me a little while to do, I'm not going to lie. So I am going to speed this up. I mean, I think you'll get the idea. And things to remember, let's see. You want to start with your pieces that are going to be in the background first. So those are the pieces that are going to be closest to the cake itself. And then layer them as you get to the front. Layer them so that they layer down to the bottom. And that's what's going to cover up all of your seams. And if you need a little water here and there to reinforce your wafer paper, that's fine. Just keep in mind that you don't want to overdo it with the water. And sometimes I have seen, and I have done, these wafer paper wraps with different designs. I kind of like the horizontal layered strips. Those are nice too. And I did do one that was kind of at a diagonal a while ago, maybe 2 years ago. And I'll try to remember to add a link to that one too, so you can see some different ways to do this. And guys, I'm sorry if I sound a little hoarse. I haven't told everybody, but I had to have another procedure done. I'm fine. I've just been having some swelling in my lungs. Or not swelling, some inflammation, and they're trying to figure out why. Might have something to do with the immunotherapy that I've been doing. But they had to do a procedure where they put a tube down my throat and took a little sample of my lungs. Sounds a lot worse than it actually was. But it has left me with this hoarse voice. So I'm sorry if this is annoying. It will get better over time. And now we're going to do the top tier also. Obviously, we don't need as much wafer paper because it's not as wide, because the tier is smaller. Now I'm just playing around with the placement again. I had an idea, and then I had to actually apply that to the cake itself, and I kind of lost track of where I was. So this did, like I said, take a little time. So make sure that if you'd want to do a design like this, you allow yourself enough time. Now I'm just attaching again with a water. You could use wafer paper conditioner. You could use that as a glue also. That works just fine. But, you know, why use ingredients that you don't need to, and just plain water is going to be fine, because the flexibility for this one just comes in the wrapping it around the cake, and you don't really need wafer paper conditioner to do that. And once we got these where I want them, then I'm going to use my quilting ruler to cut, and an X-Acto knife to cut off the excess. And if you need some extra pieces, just pop them in the back like I'm doing there. And again, cutting off the excess. And all you do is bring your cake out from the fridge, wrap it around. This is so easy, such an easy way to add some interest to your cake. And just glue it to itself. Since you have it on that backing piece, that's seriously all you have to do. You're doing your decorating on the tabletop instead of on the cake, and that's kind of nice. And make sure you get it as snug as you can and line it up before you commit to actually gluing it to itself. Just make sure that you have it exactly where you want it. Now we're going to add our flowers. I'm just kind of using the pleats of the wafer paper to kind of tuck those in. That way you're not adding any buttercream or any more water, because you don't at this stage want to warp your paper. Use what you already have in there. It worked really well to just tuck them in there. And then our little circle, what should we call those? Circle stems? I don't know what to call those. They're kind of an abstract decoration. I just kind of poked into the wafer paper and then in the cake a little bit here and there. It's kind of a little flourish. I really kind of like that idea. I really went with the wafer paper on this one. And then I'm just adding these artificial baby's breath just to add a little touch of something else, a little different texture, a little fullness. Everything else is flat. So I wanted to add that kind of 3D element to it. Sorry about my head being in the way. And yes, my hair is down. This was just for the video. For when I'm actually making cakes that are being served to people, I definitely pull my hair back. I promise. Now, you wouldn't have to add these, but I'm glad I did. I think it added a little bit of a softness, actually, to the overall look of the cake. The ones on the board, I did add some buttercream to get them to stick, and that's just fine. So there's the finished product, guys. Again, I apologize for my voice and for not talking as much as I normally do. But I hope you still liked it and got something from it, and we will catch you on the next one.